Welcome back to Humbled Highs, episode 6, Tommy Toughguy and Her Dad. So number one rule of the streets is if you speak it, you don't know it. If you know it, you don't speak it. And this episode is a shout out to my barber, Gene Miles. I told him this story a while back and he said, "Yo man, you got to include this story in your podcast." I said, "Really, that story?" He's like, "Yeah, that was a funny story." I said, "Okay." So this was to you, Gene. So what I mean by if you speak it, you don't know it. If you know it, you don't speak it. That means if you know that you can do something to somebody, you don't talk about it. You just do it. If you talk about doing something to somebody, that means you don't do it. You're not going to do it. Similar to the difference between a Chihuahua and a Rottweiler. A Chihuahua thinks he's big and bad like a Rottweiler, and he'll bark, 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 but the second you step to him, what does he do? He just runs to the corner and yip, 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 yip. A Rottweiler, he'll growl, you step to him, and he'll bite you. So that's what I'm talking about. So when I was a drug dealer, I got myself in top condition, top shape. I started dieting. Because I had a lot of time on my hands. I didn't really have a 9 to 5. I had a lot of time. So got me a gym membership, started working out 5, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes 2 times a day. And I went from, mildly pudgy to having a 6-pack and being in tremendous shape. And I wanted to, I could honestly feel that I was fearful of the situation I was in, lots of customers, the fact that I was in the criminal lifestyle, and I wanted to start learning some type of martial arts. So I started digging into all kind of different martial arts, and I finally landed on this one. It's called Muay Thai, and it's an ancient art developed by the Thailand army that was meant to be this close combat fighting, where maybe you've seen the movie Kickboxer, Jean-Claude Van Damme, maybe not. But what it does is it uses all your body. It uses your fists, your elbows, your kicks, your knees, your close combat, knees to the chest, headbutts. It doesn't really get into the grappling, but it's meant to take out your opponents very fast and without doing much damage to the fighter himself. So, I'm not the kind of guy that would go and spar with somebody. I get red in the face and I get really upset if somebody puts their hands on me. So I'm not the kind of guy to play around. So, and I didn't want to go to, per se, martial arts studio and learn it. I'm a self-taught kind of guy. So I thought, I went and researched a bunch of different books and found one that had lots of pictures. And I went and bought a heavy bag and installed it in my garage. And I started learning, and the simple basics of, how far to stand away from an opponent, how to throw a punch, how to square up your feet, the dominant hand. And I'm ambidextrous, so I can swing both sides. And then knowing exactly how far away you can kick from, how high you can kick. And even at my age, I even got a bigger heavy bag now in my garage. It's a 150 pound and it's as tall as I am. And I practice, still to this day, kicking, punching and kneeing it. And I can kick somebody that's my height, 6'3", in the head. And so I practice this 5 days a week. I did not have a firearm the whole time I was a drug dealer. So that put that pressure on needing to defend myself. Why didn't I have a firearm? Well, I know that if you have a firearm plus drugs, that adds 10 years to your sentence. I was already looking at 25 to life. I didn't need, another 10 years added on to that. So I say all that to say, to lead into the story, Tommy Toughguy is what I call the Chihuahuas, the Billy B, bad butts, and Tommy Toughguys. They're the guys that wear the MMA shirts that have never fought in an MMA fight. They wear the affliction shirts and talk about, oh, I'll beat him up. I'll beat that guy up. Man, no, you won't. No, because if you would, you'd already done it. You wouldn't go tell a bunch of people you're going to go beat them up. That's just funny to me. So I didn't have a firearm, and so I practiced this martial arts, so that way if I got myself into jam, then I could defend myself, and I felt really confident. So a couple relationships before before my wife, I dated this girl, and we were, quasi serious. We got pretty close, and I don't know, we probably dated for maybe a year, I think. And one night, it was a Sunday night, it was a school night. Like I said, my son lived with me, and she was staying the night over at my house, and she got this call from her dad, and her dad was like, he was drunk, and he was too drunk to drive home, and he asked her to come pick him up from the bar. And he lived pretty far away. He was actually in a bar in Madison, not far down the road from where I lived. So she asked me, she said, hey, can I go pick up my dad and bring him over here? And it was already kind of late. It was like, I don't know, like 10 o'clock or something. And I said, kind of apprehensive, I've got 50 pounds of pot and a whole bunch of money at the house. I don't want a whole bunch of attention. But I said, okay, you can pick him up. And she came back home with him a little while later. And I explained to him, because my son had already gone to bed. And I explained to this guy, I said, listen, you can stay here for the night. It's not a problem. I just need you to keep it quiet. And I could tell he wasn't like dog-faced drunk, but he was definitely too drunk to drive. And I don't support people drinking and driving. So I just explained, you got to just keep quiet. And he's like, yeah, no problem. I said, my son's got to go to school in the morning. It's a school night. He understood. We all go to bed. And then it had to be sometime in the middle of the night, we hear this ruckus in the living room, and I can hear somebody hitting on the walls and stuff. And I say, would you go check on your dad? And she gets up, and I can hear there's some, verbal arguing going on. And then I hear the back door open up, and I'm like, man, what the heck is going on? I don't need nothing going on here tonight. And then I hear her yelling, and kind of like she's in distress in the backyard. So I jump up out of bed, throw on some, a t-shirt, and I start to walk towards the back door, and I can see the window out in the backyard, and she's laying on the ground. And I get to this heightened alert state, and he's already at the back door as I meet him. And he swings on me with all his might. And it's like, boom, all that training that I had been doing, it just clicked. And I caught that punch. He threw a right, and I caught it with my left. And I proceeded to walk him out the door, and I tripped up his back foot, and then I got him into a high mount position, which is kind of like I'm on top of him, and he can't move away from it. And so I had him pinned down, and I had his right arm across his body. And so I'm putting all this pressure on his right arm. His other arm can't do anything. He's basically immobilized. And he starts yelling, I'm going to turn you in. I'm going to turn you in. And I'm like, no, I'm like, just be quiet, man. I don't need no problems right now. Like, I lived right across the street from an apartment complex, and yelling in the middle of the night on a Sunday night, not a good idea. Not a good idea. I'm like, shush, 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 shush. And he's not cooperating. And I grab that arm and I start pushing down and I start twisting it. And he's still not, I can tell like the alcohol is not affecting him. The pain it's not registering. And I can see that my son comes outside and he's seeing what's going on. And my girlfriend at the time, she's standing up watching it, and I'm just on top of him. And I'm like, you're going to be quiet. And he's continuing to threaten that he's going to turn me in. And I keep on twisting that arm. And then I heard this really deep pop, and I dislocated his shoulder. And that's when he made this sound like you stepped on a dog's tail, like a little tiny dog's tail. And then he immediately shut up, and I knew it was over with. I got up, and he started to get up, and I put my foot in his back, and I kicked him towards the road. And I said some really ugly things to him. And I said, don't you ever come back here again. And he started walking down the road. We all walked back in the house, me, that girl, and my son. And she's crying, obviously. She's a little traumatized by her dad assaulting her in my house and in my backyard. And, well, she said, I need to go get him. I said, well, sure. I mean, it's the middle of the night. He's got a dislocated shoulder. That's your dad. You should probably take care of him. And I didn't see her for the rest of the night. The next day she came back, and that's when she told me, she's like, yeah, I had to take him to the hospital, something like that. And he had a dislocated shoulder. And I was like, dang, man, that sound still resonates in my head of that shoulder pop. It's like you ever had your hip, you've been sitting on the couch for a long time, and then that hip pops real deep. That's what it sounded like. But I felt that pressure release, so I knew I had done some damage. Homie needed some help at the hospital. I wasn't trying to hurt the man, but it was just a situation I was in. And she told me that day, she said, my dad is a karate black belt and used to be a weightlifter. I was like, he just looked like a little Hispanic guy to me. But I kind of found it as a crown or something. Like, hey man, my Muay Thai training's paid off. I was able to beat this guy up, per se. I didn't really beat him up, but what happened with that girl, man, like a few months later, I took her on this fancy trip, and she was kind of a, I don't know, high maintenance type of girl. And on this trip, something, I don't really remember what she had asked, but I had said no and upset her or something. And she said, yeah, I'm going to turn you in. And I was like thinking, your dad told me the same thing, and I dislocated his shoulder. Like, I was like, I said, you should not have said that. You definitely you just messed up. You messed up, right? You messed up. From Boys in the Hood, if you know what I'm talking about. Well, that was the end of that relationship. We got back home from the trip, and I said, bye, Felicia. And it was over. And that was pretty much, you don't threaten a drug dealer with turning them in because you don't get your way. I mean, how do you think that's going to turn out? I mean, I could have got her got and wouldn't have been anything. For me at the time, at the mental state I was in, you do not say that in that situation. But to bring it full circle, you never want to look for a fight. You never want to talk about fighting or beating somebody up. Going back to if you speak it, you don't know it. If you know it, you don't speak it. If somebody's talking about beating me up, I just casually put it to the side, because if somebody's going to do it, they're going to do it without telling you they're going to do it. I don't advocate for fighting because 9 times out of 10, you're going to get hurt in a fight. If you throw a punch, it's not like the MMA. They've got their wrist guards. They've got gloves on. If you throw a punch out in the streets with your hand, you're either going to break your wrist, break one of your knuckles. And that's what I like about Muay Thai is that I can use my feet and my elbows and my knees. But generally, I don't want to get into no fight. That can, even if you win, you're going to get hurt. I'm going to end up missing work, losing money. It's just not worth it. The only time it's worth it is if I have no option, or if I see somebody defenseless, I'm going to go and defend them. You know, my wife that thinks I've got this hero complex where I'm just, looking out for trouble to try and fix it. But I just really haven't had that kind of opportunity. I've kind of wanted those kind of opportunities, but, like I said, I'm not looking to get in a fight because it's going to hurt. Whether you win or lose, you're going to get hurt. So I would just advocate, know how to fight, to defend yourself and defend the ones that you love, and let God handle the rest. So this has been a great short episode. I hope you guys like it. Do me a favor, share my podcast with your friends and family. Know that I love you and God loves you.